It up to the, there we go. So I want to welcome you all, especially our distinguished visitor, our international director, Jeff Sokol. Thank you for coming to visit quiet little District 45, but watch out for us. And this evening, I want to welcome you all to a very special version of the District 45 Striving for Success webinars. And as you've already heard, this is a special event. Joe's willing and able and certainly competent to take care of business this evening. So what I would like to tell you about Joe is that he is a 9-time district international speech champion and a 2-time world champion finalist. And he believes that Toastmaster audiences are the best audiences in the world. And he is excited to facilitate this question and answer session because you are dedicated to make a difference in this world, one speech at a time. Joe is hoping that in some small way, he can help you on your journey to create a great contest speech. And maybe, just maybe, there is a world champion among us. Please welcome Joe Grondin, distinguished Toastmaster, accredited speaker, and our presenter this evening. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure for me to be here to be able to facilitate and help facilitate this session. And I have to admit, this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. After watching speech contests, okay, you've decided that you would like to compete in a speech contest, maybe wanting to win the World Championship of Public Speaking trophy, that huge, beautiful trophy. And all I'm going to share with you here today are lessons that I have learned in the last 20 plus years of participating in the World Championship of Public Speaking. And it's all about those different lessons. This is my perception of what ingredients go into a great contest speech. And after watching all of these contests, I've come up with, does your speech have a 5-star rating? Will the judges give you a 5-star rating? Will the audience give you a 5-star rating? So let's talk about the different stars that I believe go into a great contest speech. So star number 1, is your speech, is the contest speech that you deliver, does it have a creative surprise within the speech? A creative surprise, something the audience would not have expected. And I'm reminded when I get to this star of my granddaughter, Dallas. She's 5 years old. I want you to picture this 5-year-old is in a restaurant. She's leaving the restaurant. She doesn't really watch where she's going. She's very curious about everything. And doesn't she go head first, bump into a 6-foot freestanding pole, which crashes to the floor. The whole restaurant goes silent. They all look at Dallas. And this 5-year-old girl, blue eyes, looking up at me and saying, "Boys, I didn't see that coming." What is it within our speech that the audience would think, "Boys, I didn't see that coming"? What is that creative surprise? There are many world champions that show us that. One in particular, Aaron Beverly, world champion of public speaking. Aaron Beverly's speech title had 57 words in it. Can you imagine the contest chair having to recite that speech title not once, but twice? He had the audience in a roar of laughter, and he hadn't even spoken one word. What's that creative surprise that the audience would not have seen, would not have expected? I also think of Darren Tay, a world champion of public speaking, walks out on stage, beautiful suit. And doesn't he pull out of his pocket a pair of white underwear? And he puts the white underwear over his pant legs, over his suit. And I want you to picture Darren standing there with white underwear. And without saying a word, the audience are with him. Every single member of that tooth. What's that creative surprise that the audience would not have expected? And that takes that creative process within the speech writing of what you can show the audience something that they've never seen before. That's star number one. Now, star number two. What is that global outreach that's in your message? What is that global outreach that the world needs to hear? What is that message? I'm working with a speaker by the name of Anne-Marie Collette, and her message is world peace. To spread world peace through the Rotarian organization, to accomplish world peace. That's a global message that the world needs to hear. Darren Tay, with the underwear over his suit, his message actually was how to overcome bullying, whether you are the bully or not. That is a global message. Now, one of the questions that people have been discussing through the World Championship, and it's an ongoing question, as a contest speech, do you make a Toastmaster reference or not? Do you make a Toastmaster reference or not? It's a big question. Here is what I would say. I would say, no, don't make a Toastmaster reference. Because if your speech is truly a global message for anyone, anywhere, and you make a Toastmaster reference, you just included Toastmasters and excluded anybody not in Toastmasters. To make sure that it has a global outreach, that you could deliver that speech anywhere in the world, anywhere, anyone. And that's going to reach a global audience. What is that global message that you want to deliver that will reach? I've watched many speech contests, and on the odd occurrence, I will hear a speaker that will talk just to men, leaving women out, or talk to just to women and leaving men out. What is that global outreach that includes our globe, our world? That's the second star. Now, the third star, is your speech word memorable? Is your speech word memorable? Are your words memorable enough that you'll remember them for the rest of your life? And I know Jeff can relate to this one, and it can be in a tagline. Dana Jaya Hederachi, 2014 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I see something in you. That tagline, I still remember 9 years later. And he repeated that tagline throughout his speech, which connected me to his message. Is your speech word memorable? Will people remember some of the words, part of your speech, for the rest of their lives? And that is a part of the construction of the speech. Now, David Brooks has done a lot of workshops on public speaking, and he is one of my favorites when it comes to word choices. If you ever want to take a look at his World Championship speech, look up Silver Bullet, 1990 World Champion of Public Speaking. He knows how to put his words together. And he actually helped me to wordsmith. He also said, in Microsoft Word, when you script your speech, and that's another conversation altogether, do you script or not? When you script your speech, check to see what grade level the speech is at. And now David Cormier mentions that a lot, and he's involved a lot in the speech contest, and he took in a lot of the workshops, and he has gone out of his way to make sure that the words are a grade 5 or 6 level. There is a function in Microsoft Word that allows you to see what grade level the speech is. And David Brooks recommends a grade 5 or grade 6 level to allow the audience to soak in your words, to remember your words, to be simple. Is your speech word memorable? That's a third star. The 4-star. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Are you going out of your way to be the best speaker you can be? To know what your strengths and weaknesses are, the best thing to do is enlist mentors, coaches. These are people that are honest with you in a loving way. They will evaluate your speech and they're honest with you what your strengths and weaknesses are. And with their help, they will allow you to strengthen your strengths and overcome your weaknesses. And I have been very fortunate to have mentors and coaches that got on board and allowed me to explore me as a person and me as a speaker, and allowed me to be the best speaker that I can be at a given time. And I've had world champions, past international presidents, my club. I've had many, many mentors that would allow me to strengthen my strengths and overcome my weaknesses. And none of those people that came to my aid, and this is a testament to Toastmasters International, asked for 1 cent. All you have to do is ask. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Now, my weakness is finding the words. If I look at that 3rd star, is my speech word memorable? When I first started the speech contest, absolutely not. So I had to enlist these people who I knew could wordsmith and learn from them to make sure that the words that I speak, they'll be memorable, maybe for the rest of their lives. And it could be in that tagline. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Get those coaches and mentors to help you strengthen those strengths and overcome your weaknesses. That's the 4-star. Now the 5th star, and this is the one that I think is the most important. Does your speech have an emotional connection with your audience? We all share common emotions: happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, surprise, fear. These are all emotions that we share. And this was first introduced to me by David Brooks, who talked to me about the common emotions. What emotional roller coaster can you take your audience on? I was fortunate enough to be sharing the stage with David Henderson, the 2010 world champion of public speaking. And some of you are nodding your head. You probably remember that speech, and you probably remember Dave Henderson. He had us crying. He had us laughing. He had us angry, going through the roller coaster of emotions throughout his speech. Halfway through his speech, during a sad moment, he was actually crying. He was actually living in that moment. What is that emotional connection that you can hold on to your audience to get that 5th star for that 5-star rating? You know, it's not about the trophy. Because if it is about the trophy, think about Darren Lacroix's quote: if it's about the trophy, just go buy one. You see, if your speech has that creative surprise, something the audience would not have expected, if your speech has that global outreach that the world needs to hear, if your speech is word memorable, I see something in you. If your speech is delivered by the best speaker that you can be, by strengthening your strengths, by overcoming your weaknesses through a coach or a mentor, and if your speech has an emotional connection, you will deliver a gift, a 5-star gift for any audience, anywhere, anyone. It's not about the trophy. It's all about that gift that you give. There is no trophy big enough than that. And what I'd like to do tonight is to allow for questions and answers if you're on that road to developing a great contest speech. And we can open up for questions now if you'd like.
Question?
Sergey.
One more time about number 3, speech words memorable. You mentioned about programming Microsoft Word. I didn't quite get it. Great level, gray level.
Yeah.
I just want to learn a little bit more. How can I find it, and what's the exact name of this program, and how to use it? If you can give us a little bit more information about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. It came to my attention a while ago and I started using it. And it's in the program Microsoft Word. And in that particular program, there are some accessories, tools, and it's an advanced tool. You sort of have to go through the menus of your Microsoft Word, and you'll find a tool that will be able to grade level your script. And if you go through the Microsoft Word program and go through the different menus, you'll find it. Now, Sergey, what I can do with you is I can find it, take a screenshot, I can send it to you. So then you know exactly where it is. How does that sound?
That would be great. Thank you.
Sergey, I will do that for you. And on that subject, word memorable, I want to add less is more. And the question of whether you script your speech or not. And I tend to script a 5 to 7 minute speech because I tend to look at it and say, gosh, I'm repeating myself here. I could say this with less words. And that basically allows the script to be whittled down into something that is simple enough that it's easy to understand. And with that added technology that's in Microsoft Word, it allows you to. And I know that David used it also. And he's been putting some of his speeches through that and being able to look and see what grade level it is. And it's a great tool. Any other question? You're welcome.
Yeah, Joe, this is Linda. By script, do you mean write it out word for word? And when you deliver a contest speech, you have it committed to memory word for word as well?
Okay, and there's a process, and that's a great question, Linda. I used to script it word for word right from the beginning. But as I went through the process, I thought, you know what? I don't want the speech to sound like an essay. So what I do is I create the skeleton of the speech, and I speak the speech the way I naturally speak the speech. And when I'm comfortable with it, then I script. And there's a couple of reasons why I script. I know that I can speak at 700 to 700 words per minute. Oh no, 730 words will give me about a 645. I know exactly, and I'm about a 125 to 150 word per minute speaker. So that way, by scripting it, and if I highlight it, that's how many words it is. And I know I'm going to be either over or under, or do I have to cut? And there's a process. And the hardest thing for any speaker, Linda, and I have to admit, you have the speech and it takes you 10 minutes to deliver, and you have to start cutting things from the speech that you really, really love in the speech. So scripting the speech, looking at it to make sure that you're comfortable in speaking it, and then you start looking at the words. And sometimes what I do, Linda, is when my mentors and my coaches, the ones particularly that are wordsmith, I get them to go through to make sure that I'm using the most powerful words that I could use within the speech. And sometimes they'll add to it, which then increases my speech to 15 minutes instead of 5 to 7 minutes. But then that's the process of cutting and putting your speech, what I call putting your speech on a diet. Does that help, Linda?
It does. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right.
Sabina.
Hi, Joe. Nice to meet you. And I just knew about you from the email, and I unfortunately missed the that speech contest program that was held, and maybe I missed to hear you speaking also. I really appreciate if you have recording, we can have that. And also missed 2 points in the beginning, like first and second, because I just heard the third one when I start the session. Can you just give me a point on that if it's possible for you? Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No
Thank
problem
you.
at all. The first point I made, the first star, was what was your creative surprise? Something the audience would not have expected. And this is, whenever I work with speakers, this is easier said than done. This is something that you could say or do within the speech that you know the audience would not have seen. And I'll bring up Muhammad Khatani, the 2015 world champion of public speaking, walking out on stage in front of 2,000 people with a cigarette and a lighter in his hand, going to light a cigarette. And of course, the audience were surprised because you weren't allowed to smoke in the resort. Of course, and he looks at the audience and says one word, "What?" And they erupted in laughter. That's an example of a creative surprise. We would not have expected that. The second point, Sabina, is the global, what's your global outreach? What is it? What's that message that reaches out to anyone, anywhere? What's your message that it doesn't matter what audience you are in front of, whether it's a Toastmaster audience or not, what is that global message? That was star number 2. I think that's what you missed so far.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I did actually. It's very nice points you mentioned. Yeah, thank you so much,
Okay.
Joe.
No problem, anytime.
I'm here. I also missed, I think I missed third point as well, because there was no timing. When I got the email, I saw Madhu has sent that email, but I was asking what time, and then I saw, okay, it's today, and then I saw, oh, I'm late. So I think I missed the third point. So if you can tell me the third point, that would be great.
Not a problem. And it's a pleasure to see you here today. The third part is word memorable. Was your speech word memorable? Something that the audience, the words that they'll remember for the rest of their lives or for a long time. And I use the example of Dhananjaya Hederachi, the 2014 world champion, whose tagline was, "I see something in you." And for 9, I still remember that tagline, those words, and it connects me to his message. So that's the word memorable portion of that. That's that star right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Joe, we have Sabina and now Troy with hands up.
Okay. We'll go with, how about Troy? Then I'll get to Sabina.
Oh,
How you doing, Joe?
sorry, excuse me. I don't think I raised it. I think I missed to lower my hand once I asked you. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I am a former teacher, so when I see a hand raised, I'm very conscious of that.
Sure, thank you.
All right, Troy, you have a question.
I do, Joe. In number 4, you talked about knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and I understand the concept of having mentors and coaches. But my question is, and I've done a lot of things over the years to understand my own strengths as a person, but you talked about as a speaker. And my question is, are there tools available that can help us with that, or is that strictly from the coach and mentor perspective?
I only know it through the coaches in the mentors spectrum. There are some books out there, and I don't know if I still have it here. And it was a book. Just one second, I'm going to stray a little bit. Here it is. This is a resource that I fall back on quite a bit. And I wonder if Jeff would recognize it. It's called The Speaker's Edge. Now, this is a book that I always go to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And if I'm missing something, then it's obviously, it's a weakness I have to work on, that I have to develop within my speech. And it's always a reminder. These are world champion Mark Brown, Darren Lacroix, Patricia Fripp, who is with the Speaker's Edge, Ed Tate, Craig Valentine, all, and I've had the honor of listening to them in their workshops. This is a reference that I'd be more than happy to share with you, Troy, that allows you to leaf through it and see basically if you're on the right track and if you need to work on certain areas. And I know that you're delivering a keynote coming up, and I think this would be a wonderful resource for you. Toastmasters International, with their Pathways program, there are certain paths also too that will help to reveal some of your strengths and some of your weaknesses. And actually within the club itself, those evaluations give us a hint as to what you have to work on and what are your strengths. So I can't stress enough that once you get into the, because I know you're a fairly new Toastmaster, and once you get into the paths, is sitting down with your mentor and saying, okay, what path do I want to take? And whether it's, and it could be presentation mastery, that's going to help because it has the in-servicing right there on that particular path to help you uncover your strengths. I already had the pleasure of hearing you speak, and I already know that you have many, many strengths to start with. And now we have to sort of nitpick a little bit and get into, okay, this is an area that I think we need to work on as far as your weaknesses and to overcome those weaknesses. And I really, yeah, and I really shouldn't say weaknesses. You know what would be a better word? Habits.
Yeah, and yeah, and
Habits.
Areas of opportunity for growth.
Exactly. And I even struggle with strengths and weaknesses because I grew up with gems and opportunities. What are the gems? Let's polish the gems. And what are the opportunities to make a great speech greater? And I think that is a big part of uncovering and being the speaker that you were meant to be.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I will borrow that resource from you, Joe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're in the same club. So I guess that's a direct connection right there. And you know, just to touch on the creative surprise, I mean, I know Albert Cormier is here, and every time I'm on a call with Albert Cormier, there is always a creativeness in how his mind works and speaks. And I have to hand it to Albert because every time a subject comes up, he will break out in song, and the song would directly relate to the point that's being made. That is an example of creative surprise. That would be something that would be wonderful to include in a speech. That is yours, Albert, and yours alone. So I think that's a good example right there. So, and it's always a pleasure whenever I'm on a call with you.
Thank you, Joe. To quote Sally Field, you like me.
See what I mean? It puts a smile on your face. Go ahead, Paul. Oh, Linda.
I'd say Linda's up.
Okay, Linda.
All right, so that reminds me, Joe, when you mentioned something about singing, and maybe I need to look at the rule book. But if you were to sing, like, say, 3 or 4 words from a song, right? Do you need to attribute that to the songwriter, even if it's only 3 words? Like, they could, you know, something like "Climb Every Mountain." That's for an example. Do you need to say, "Oh, that's from Julie Andrews and the Sound of Music"? Do you need to credit that in your speech, even if it's only 3 words?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think we need to make sure that we give the credit where it's due.
Okay.
But I think the whole point of it, that's my personal preference, because then that way you're not crossing any lines.
Mhm.
And there's more than likely nothing will ever happen from it. I've heard speeches that have, you know, they have broke out in song, and they didn't attribute it to the artist. And I often wonder, I put myself in the artist's shoes as to, okay, you know, that would probably have mixed emotions. So I would definitely recommend, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mixed Emotions is a Rolling Stones song.
See, I grew up dancing to the music. I don't know the words and the people that produce the music, so I'm a little out of sync. Get it? Out of sync? Nobody got it. Oh, Albert got it. Okay. My wife would be rolling her eyes right about now.
Are you in a
Are
boy
there-
band, Joe?
No. Somebody else got it. Okay.
Joe, you can't see it over the sun, but Jeff has his hand up.
Oh, Jeff, yes, for sure. Oh, yes, I can see the hand now, Jeff.
Yeah, I had my hand up, and I'm the background's also promoting the international convention. I don't know if you caught that or not, but
Yeah.
So Joe, I've intentionally been waiting for the hubbub to die down. I wanted to make sure everyone else got their questions asked. This is more of a leading question than anything else. I noticed your number 5 is about emotional connection with the audience, and you referenced David Henderson's amazing, excellent speech. I think the one that prevented you from winning the world championship in 2015, because I thought your speech was also incredible that year too.
Thank you.
And I wanted to talk about that because I use a different word. Emotional connection is, of course, incredibly important, and there's a skill in developing that as well. I think some of that also boils down to emotional transparency or emotional authenticity. I think those are all connected. And I was wondering if you might share some tips for developing that. Things you might have done or things you might suggest for us as speakers and leaders, because it's equally important on the leadership side to become an authentic leader, both emotionally and in other capacities as well. I was wondering what you've done yourself or what you might suggest for those watching be here today or watching this recording.
Yeah. That is a great question. And it was something I struggled with at the beginning of starting with the speech contests. I thought that by watching world champions way back when, you had to be over animated and artificially show emotion. The authenticity went out the window. And it was more of the acting and trying to convince the audience that there's an emotion in this particular speech. So when I talk about my weaknesses, that was one of my weaknesses, that it was over animated, wasn't sincere enough. And when people talk to me about crossing that line and breaking that connection with the audience, they're actually talking about breaking that emotional connection with the audience, because the audience wants to know you in a genuine you. They want to know this is why it's so fascinating in public speaking and anything else we do as leaders and communicators. They want to know that you are genuine. They want to know that when you present or you lead, you're presenting and leading by Jeff Sobel, the person. And that's where the emotional connection comes in. And we all know the value of relating a story, and we all have personal stories. And within those stories, there's emotional connections within the story. If by chance you're living those emotional stories in the moment, that is a genuine emotion. And if somebody does start to cry during that genuine in the moment, then that is genuine. But I think once we cross that line into, especially in the contest speech, well, I have to be happy here and I have to be mad here, and everything looks a little mechanical. The audience, we have to give the audience credit. They will know what is fake and what is you. And the best advice I can give anybody in a speech contest, anybody presenting, or anybody that's in a leadership role, tell your story that's in the moment of that story, and let the emotions take care of themselves naturally. And the audience will feel it right here. And I think we've all been in the audience where things looked a little too animated, looked a little too fake. And all of a sudden, the trust is severed between the speaker and the leader. So the best advice I can give whenever we present or whenever we lead is to, when we relate those personal stories, and there's nobody better than you to tell and deliver that story, because it's going to bring up those natural emotions within, and the audience will feel it. But if we're trying to fake it, the audience will feel that also. Does that help, Jeff?
Thank you, my friend. You speak truth, and it resonates with me right here.
All right, great to see you.
Likewise.
I wanted to ask one question, Joe, because for me, this time I couldn't go further. And then there were lots of story that I had it. So how do I decide, like for next year? I want to prepare from now. I have lots of stories. So how do we decide which story to take on, or like, is it good or not? Because at the end, that matters, because I noticed. So what's your suggestion for that?
Okay, and that's a great question. And I'm going to steal from Mark Hunter, former world champion of public speaking. Some of you are nodding your heads, you know Mark Hunter. He advises a passion pit activity. And what that is, and I love it, I tried it, and it really, really works. You invite people that you trust will tell you the truth. And you have, basically, you're the speaker and you're trying to develop a speech. And you have maybe 2 or 3 passions that you want to talk about. 3 is a good number. So there's 3 areas that you want to talk about. Could be like, let's say, for instance, one is a strong leadership area, one's a strong communication area, one could be a wellness. And you have 3 speeches and you have the stories, and you bring them to the passion pit. And you maybe have 4 or 5 people, of friends around you, and they're going to challenge you. They're going to challenge you in each category. You are passionate, let's say, about wellness. Why are you passionate about wellness? And you go through your experience and your story of why you want to talk about wellness. And then they'll continually, why did you develop that passion for wellness? And you get to a point, and it gets draining after a while, but all of a sudden, out of the 3 speech ideas that you have, there's going to be one that you're going to gravitate towards. And the people that are within and asking you these questions and asking you to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into each one of the topics, this is a workshop that really works. And then it allows you to zero in, hey, this speech topic is gaining a lot of attention from me and from the people involved in the passion pit. This is the direction I think I should go, because it's led with your passion, it's led with your heart. And that's the strongest pull that you're getting. And that's where you start. Then the next step would be, okay, what is that message? I know we all hear, and I wish I could say I developed this, but I've learned this from many world champions and people who have spoken on stage. What's that message in 10 words or less? And I think we've had that discussion, haven't we? What's that message in 10 words or less? And you have that message and you post it. This is my message. Now, can it change? Yes, it can change, because as ideas come in, everything has to zero in on that one message. And all of a sudden, ideas will come in to say, well, now we're on to a different message. And remember, I was talking to you about my weaknesses? I would develop a speech and my wife would look at me and say, you have 10 different messages in that speech. How are you going to get your audience to understand what message you want to deliver? That's how important that message, 10 words or less, is. And everything revolves around that message. Now, that's the hard part. The easy part is, what's the structure that zeroes in on that message? What are the 3 or 4 or 5 points that you want to make that zeroes in on that message. Everything goes back to that message. Now, all you have to do now, you have your structure, you have your message, you have your points, and now you have your stories. You look at all of your stories and you say, okay, now that story will fit this point. That story will fit this point. And it goes back to Jeff's point. Those stories are pulling with it that emotional connection because they're your stories. And it's going to pull at your heartstrings and your emotions. So you're pulling those stories into the speech. And the next part, again, it's part of my learning process. What is that introduction that's going to catch the audience's attention? And that is a perfect place to put that creative surprise in your speech. What is it? Ooh, I didn't see that coming. What's in that introduction and what's in that conclusion, which has your most powerful words that zeroes in on that powerful message that you have? And that would get you on your way to having a 5-star rating speech.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Hey, Joe, I as the moderator, I don't want to take up time, but I want you to take me back to the passion pit for a second.
Mhm.
And you say you get some folks together, you've got 3 speech ideas, you're going to toss them around. And what I heard was that you're going to ask them to ask you, why are you so passionate?
Nope.
No?
No, that's where the people, it's a lot of work for the people that you invite. They're the
Yes.
ones that are going to come up with the questions.
Okay.
You're going to actually outline the 3 ideas you have for a speech. You're very passionate about these 3 ideas. Now your audience that's sitting there, you're going to go through each one of those ideas and they're going to say, well, why do you think this is so important? Why do you think this is a global message? Why do you think? So they're going through all of their why questions. And it's forcing me as the speaker to come up with ideas and why. See, they're digging deep down into my heart, into my soul, as to why I want to pursue that particular speech. And then once we have all of those whys out, and it takes an hour and a half to go through, and we're taking notes and I'm answering the questions. And you know what's fascinating about this process? I'm coming up with answers for that speech that I never, ever thought I had deep inside of me. And isn't that where you want the speech to come from the heart? And all of a sudden, I'm coming up with stories and remembering stories that relate to that message. And what will happen, Paul, is one of those speeches is going to get more attention. And the reason why it's going to get more attention is because when I answer those questions, I'm zeroing in subconsciously to the speech that I truly want to give. Okay.
Thank you for that. Troy had his hand up there for a second.
Well, I was just going to say that's actually the 5 whys that Toyota used in process improvement, and it's also a great way to, well, as Joe saying, for clarifying your intent on anything and digging deeper. So yeah, it's a great process.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Troy, that's what drew me to the whys is I'm a lean yellow belt. Yes.
Then you know it well.
we're talking about the process.
Yeah, and you can actually do it by yourself too. I used to do it when I would train salespeople in asking them what their intention is on calling somebody. And you can dig deeper by asking why, until you get to the point where you realize what your intention is. And then you have to question yourself, is it the best intention? Is it the intention that serves everybody or just serves you? And you may want to look at changing your intention.
Right.
Which takes a
Right.
lot more soul searching.
and one of the things that I found fascinating, especially when it comes to the idea of the passion pit, when I first decided to compete in the international speech contest, my mentor Shirley Kelly, and Jeff, I don't know if Shirley was before your time, but Shirley was phenomenal. This is the late Shirley Kelly. She was our district governor at the time, and she said to me, reach out to world champions to help you with your speech. Now, my first reaction was, who am I to reach out to world champions? And will they even, Joe who from Canada? Why no? And she said, no, seriously, Joe, reach out to world champions. And we went through a list of, and she had gone to the conventions, and she has some of her favorite world champions that I thought would be a good fit. And lo and behold, I reached out to 4 world champions, and they all got back to me within 48 hours. 3 of them said, look, I just have too many right now that I'm working with. And one came back and said, let's do it. Let's do it. And it doesn't hurt to ask. It gives you a world champion perspective of your speech and of your message. And they get much deeper into the whys. They talk about the words, they talk about the creativeness of the speech, and they teach. And none, and I have to admit, none of those world champions asked for a cent. They just wanted to help. They wanted to give back to Toastmasters what Toastmasters gave to them. And if you just ask, you will be surprised about how many, I put world champions on a pedestal. Why would they talk to me now? If I go to a convention, they are mingling like everybody else. They have 2 legs, 2 arms, a head. Who knew? So yeah, I would encourage to reach out. There's that awkward pause.
No, it's not awkward. Everyone's taking it in. They're in their own little passion pits here. And Jeff has reminded me, because we have some time, and another path that I want to follow you on, Joe, is accredited speaker. Can you just tell us a little bit about your journey there?
Oh, there's so much in Toastmasters and different journeys you can go on. And it was a year that I was interested in doing, and I applied. The whole reason for applying for the accredited speaker is that's what I wanted to do. When I walked through the doors of our club here, and somebody said, well, Joe, how did you find out about us? And I said, well, my wife recommended me I come here. And I don't know if that's good or bad. And this lady came up to me, and she was an elderly lady, and said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a professional speaker, an inspirational speaker. And she said, well, let me introduce you to my daughter. And I have to admit, I have never had a mother want to introduce me to their daughter. I was a little taken aback by that one. And it was Shirley Kelly. And we had this discussion, and this is what I think a true leader does. A true leader allows you to take your journey your way. And when we talked about being a professional speaker, she's the one that recommended the speech contest. So that's how the speech contest journey happened. And then we sat down and talked about the accredited speaker program. Again, I looked at these accredited speakers and I put them up on a pedestal, and how hard the journey is to get the accredited speaker program. And then I realized, if I don't try, how will I know? And then you realize, oh my goodness, this wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. There's a long process to it, and there's things that you have to accomplish. And then when I finally got the accredited speaker in 2017 in Vancouver, things started to open up more so professionally. And How did it work out for me professionally? Most people outside of Toastmasters will look at the accredited speaker and say, well, what's that? What's that? Is that the Toastmaster thing? But when you look at speaker associations, we have CAPS here in Canada, you have a different association in the United States. It's the same thing as getting your CSP, I believe. And that is well known throughout the world, accredited speaker, CSP, professional speaker. So if they want to call you, and one of the things that you can put in your bio is you're one of 90 people in the world that have the accredited speaker. And that brings the credibility into it, even though they may not know exactly what accredited speaker is. It opened a lot of doors for me developing a small business in speaking. And I'm happy that I'm retired and I'm doing this, and people can call me, and I get to go to District 53, and I get to spend time with my Toastmaster family and just have a great time. I saw some of the things on the agenda, and I'm just having fun, and I'm able to fulfill that dream of being a professional speaker. The contest allowed me, when I talked about finding your strengths and weaknesses, there's no better way to discover your strengths and weaknesses than being in a speech contest. And that allowed me to help me be the best speaker that I can be at the time. Can we get better? Of course we can, because we're always learning through the process of how to be a better speaker, how to be a better leader. And that accredited speaker certainly has helped in that vein. Thanks for the question, Paul. I appreciate that. Yes, Sergey.
Speaking about accredited speaker, what would you say about using TED Talks? As probably it's a path that can help in your journey to accredited speaker, or probably not necessarily, but would you recommend it? I think that speaking outside Toastmaster is a great way to improve your speaking skills, not just saying and staying in your club and doing Toastmaster speeches. What would you say about that?
Well, I've been in 3 TEDx talks, and I would recommend it to anyone. And what TEDx speaking does outside of Toastmasters, and I always encourage people to speak outside of Toastmasters, because there's got to be a reason why you joined this organization. Maybe it was to improve your public speaking. Why wouldn't you want to get outside of Toastmasters to do? What I love about TEDx talks, and it's a different format than a contest speech for sure. There's an idea, there's a theme. And the more creative that you are with the theme, and that goes into that creative surprise, they're not necessarily looking for, take care, Jeff, nice seeing you. They're not necessarily looking for the best speaker. They're looking for the best person with a creative new idea. And if you look at the TED Talks and how it fits, because they want your talk to fit with this creative theme. So you have, for instance, and I watch TED Talks, and I love TED Talks. And there's one out there. It's Sir Robinson. It's the late Sir Robinson on education, on how we rob our children of creativity through the school system. Is it Robinson or Robertson? But and that was one that I really looked at and thought, oh my gosh, how creative is this? There was one that actually did one on public speaking, but actually didn't have anything within the speech that would help you become a better public speaker. He went into vocal variety, and he went into different vocal varieties. He went into different staging. And by the end of it, he said, anybody can be a public speaker if you go through all of these motions, but not really say anything. And it was hilarious. One did one on scams and how to get people to stop you from scamming you. To answer your question, Sergey, yes, get outside of Toastmasters, experience these different platforms, because it stretches you. It truly stretches you to do something that you wouldn't normally do. And there are TEDx talks all over now doing virtual. And it was such a wonderful experience. And here's the other thing. TEDx Talks will do a professional video of you. great marketing tool because it would be a professional video. You can post it. This is an example of my work. And when you go outside of Toastmasters to get speaking engagements, they want to see what they're hiring. That video is so important. And I've had a videographer do maybe a 2-minute segment. And once they see what the product is and how you deliver it, because let's face it, they want you to be entertaining and they also want you to be educational. And if you can be educational, entertaining at the same time, that is a plus. That is a plus. So yes, TEDx Talks, different format. I have a book on TEDx Talks. Troy, if you want to see that book, I have it. It's on TEDx Talks. We're in the same club, so we can share quite a bit. But yes, get outside of Toastmasters and do it.
Joe, you're a brilliant example of a person going to the professional speaking without being a world champion, because all the world champions, they use their titles to promote themselves and become professional speakers, but you're not a champion yet. You kind of jumped through public, through professional speaking, straight, which is something that for me is, I would say, wonderful. And this is a good example. This is a good example. You probably don't have to necessarily be a world champion of public speaking to become a professional speaker. So,
oh, absolutely not. And the Toastmasters taught me the tools to be a great speaker. Toastmasters is a wonderful organization teaching the tools. The accredited speaker allowed me to branch out. Now, to be perfectly honest, professional speaking, and I do coach professional speakers, and wondering how they can sort of get on that road and that journey to be a professional speaker. And there has to be a niche. What is your expertise? What is it that you can offer something that's different? There's a dime a dozen motivational speakers out in the world. What are you going to offer? What's your niche? My niche is education. My niche is wellness. And those are two major areas, mainly in education. I just spent time with teachers in a keynote, had a great time. Now I get to go to a high school and speak to 800 plus high school students. Can you imagine? There's going to be a lot of dancing. There's going to be a lot of activity during that. It happens to be a high school that I taught at. So I get to go from educators to students. And I know, Albert, you can relate because you're an educator also, to be in front of that much energy. And I know I was at one of my keynotes at one of the schools, and one of the students, high school, knew me because I taught this particular student. And the teacher came up to me and said, "Would you like a cup of coffee?" And that student looked at the teacher and said, "He does not need coffee." And for good reason. Once I finished the presentation, the teacher came up to me afterwards and said, "Yeah, you really don't need coffee, do you?" So yeah, thank you very much. And it's having that niche to be able to go to. So this has been wonderful. Great questions.
Joe, I want to thank you for your time. And you definitely don't need coffee. We've reached our time. I'm sorry, I really am, because I'm very much enjoying the conversation you're having with everyone. But you have done so much for us tonight. You've taken me from the passion pit, even just thinking about a speech, all the way through, the 5 stars, right? I mean, make sure you have the 5-star rating. And this is why you are Joe Grondin and giving this presentation this evening. So we really appreciate it, Joe. And if there's anything, contact information that you want to share with everyone, just in case they want to reach out to you.
Yep.
Now would be a good time to put that in the chat. And I will certainly be able to share Joe's Toastmasters information with you if you don't catch it in in the chat this evening. But this was wonderful, Joe. I'm sorry we didn't have 50 or 60 people, but this is the way the District 45 webinars roll. But I am so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that we've recorded it, and we will promote the training and the discussion. So thank you. Do you have any closing comments?
One of the things, and you alluded to it, one of the things that I was taught very early on in my professional career, it doesn't matter how many show up, make the best of it. Present it as if there's 2,000 people in the audience, make the best of it. And I hope this helps in a small way on your journeys, either in the speech contest or speaking within Toastmasters and outside of Toastmasters. So I hope it does help.
Thank you. It did. And again, thank you. And I will stop the recording so that you can talk among yourselves.
Thanks, Joe.
Like, totally my pleasure.